It was 6:07 a.m. when Lena Rayburn laced up her trail shoes and slipped out the back door of her modest farmhouse on the northern edge of Napa Valley. The sun was still low, casting soft shadows through the redwoods, and Lena's breath hung in the crisp March air. Her husband, Clay, was asleep upstairs, and their dog, Jasper, whimpered from behind the baby gate, confused as to why he wasn't coming along. Lena jogged this trail every morning. It wound through the private ridge behind their property, dipped into Hollow Creek Preserve, and looped back through a vineyard owned by a retired winemaker named Carl Devereaux. She was always home by 7:30 to make breakfast and prepare for her shift at the local veterinary clinic. But on March 12, 2023, Lena never returned. Clay woke to an empty bed and a cold kitchen. Her shoes were gone. The coffee machine hadn't been touched. By 8:15, panic was curling its fingers around his chest. He called her cell, which rang twice before going to voicemail. He grabbed his coat, left Jasper behind, and started walking the trail. By noon, sheriff's deputies and volunteers were combing the ridge. Helicopters buzzed above. Dogs sniffed the undergrowth. Clay answered questions, but the more he talked, the more the detective seemed to watch him instead of listen. Lena Rayburn had vanished without a sound. Near Hollow Creek's South Bend, about 2 miles from the Rayburn house, searchers found a single clue, a faint trail of footprints leading off the jogging path. One was a woman's, small, narrow, tread matching Lena's Asics. The other print was broader, heavier, a work boot, and it veered off sharply, disappearing into the underbrush. Deputy Ray Castro was the first to spot it. He squatted beside the print, snapping photos with his phone. Something about it didn't sit right. It wasn't the pattern of someone out for a morning walk. It looked like someone had lunged, maybe chased. The prints were fresh. No rain had fallen since Saturday. The trail ended abruptly at a fallen log. No blood. No torn clothing. No sign of struggle. Just silence and wind. Clay Rayburn was a carpenter by trade, tall, lean, and perpetually windburned. When interviewed on camera for the first local news report, he looked shattered. His voice wavered. His hands trembled. He asked for help finding his wife. But behind the scenes, rumors had begun to swirl. Neighbors whispered about fights. Lena crying outside the hardware store. Clay's truck peeling out of their driveway. Nothing concrete. Just tension, little scenes, fragments. Sheriff's deputies searched the house. Took Clay's clothes. His computer. His truck. He passed a polygraph. Hired a lawyer anyway. And then he stopped speaking publicly altogether. 2 days after Lena's disappearance, Carl Devereaux, 82, claimed he saw a woman walking through his lower vineyard road just after dawn on March 12. I thought it was Lena, he told detectives. But she looked different. No ponytail. Hair down. Wet, maybe. She was barefoot, he added, and looked over her shoulder as if someone was behind her. Carl blinked, took a sip of brandy, and muttered, "Might have been the wind playing tricks." But I remember. I always remember things that feel wrong. Lena's cell phone was never found. Her smartwatch pinged a cell tower briefly at 6:39 a.m., just north of Hollow Creek. Then it went dead. Tex traced her movement via GPS, a straight path down the trail, turning sharply east about 400 yards before the preserve boundary. Then nothing. Detectives widened the search grid. They drained the creek. Sifted through brambles. Nothing turned up. Weeks passed. Then months. And Lena Rayburn became another name on a cold case board. It was a truffle pig named June who changed everything. 2 years after Lena vanished, a French truffle hunter named Marcel Boisclair was walking with June through a thicket in the foothills of Rutherford, 6 miles from where Lena was last seen. June squealed and rooted beside a toppled oak. Marcel expected fungus. Instead, June unearthed something pale, smooth, unmistakably human. A femur. Marcel Boisclair wasn't new to the woods. He'd come to Napa in semi-retirement, chasing the myth that Northern California truffles were the new frontier. But when June began circling the tree, pawing, snorting harder than usual, Marcel had to kneel and dig with his hands. When he saw the edge of the bone, his breath caught in his throat. He knew what he was seeing. He'd worked as a paramedic back in Toulouse. That color, dull ivory, with flake texture from years underground, wasn't animal. He backed away and called 911. Within hours, crime scene tape cordoned off the glade. Deputies swept in, quietly, methodically. By nightfall, a full skeleton had been uncovered. It was partially articulated, as if it had been placed. A shallow grave. Bones intact. One wrist was missing. A clump of auburn hair was found tangled in the dirt. No clothing. No jewelry. But at the base of the left femur, tucked in the curve of the pelvis, was a single object, a titanium screw. Orthopedic. Likely from an old injury. Lena Rayburn had broken her ankle in 2019 while rock climbing in Oregon. The coroner didn't need more than a day to confirm it. Dental records were a match. Lena had been found. Sheriff Daniel Moorcroft stood beneath the shade of a sycamore tree as the sun baked the Rutherford foothills. It had been 2 long years of false leads, grief-stricken interviews, and a town divided by suspicion. Now, Lena Rayburn's case was no longer a disappearance. It was murder. A fresh team was assembled. Not all the old investigators were invited back. The sheriff called it a new direction. Behind the scenes, everyone knew why the first investigation had gone stale. Evidence had been lost. A crime scene had never been established. Some whispered Clay had gotten off easy. Detectives revisited Hollow Creek with ground-penetrating radar. They searched the Rayburn house again. Clay had moved to Arizona 6 months earlier. In Lena's old closet, still painted with faded daisy wallpaper, they found a locked jewelry box hidden in a false panel behind the shelving. Inside, a stack of letters. Each one signed by the same name. E.D. There were 19 letters, all folded neatly, dated between 2017 and 2022. They were written in dense cursive, each one more frantic than the last. At first, they read like a former friend reaching out. Lena, you promised you'd never disappear again. Why won't you write back? You know what we buried. You know what you owe. Then they turned darker. I saw you in the vineyard. I know you remember. If you keep pretending, I'll come remind you. The final letter was dated March 5, 2023, just 1 week before Lena vanished. You can run all you want. But I'll find you in the woods again. Just like last time. The sheriff's team ran the initials. No clear match. Clay claimed he'd never seen the letters. He said Lena never mentioned anyone by those initials. But her mother, reached by phone in Eureka, said something strange. E.D. That sounds like Eliza. Eliza Dunning. Her cousin. They were thick as thieves until that summer in '98. The room fell silent. Eliza Dunning had gone missing in 1998. From the same town. And her case had never been solved. The file on Eliza Dunning was stored in a banker's box in the basement of the Napa County Courthouse. Yellowed paper. Handwritten notes. Polaroid photos curled at the edges. Eliza had disappeared on July 14, 1998. Age 17. She was last seen walking home from a bonfire on the edge of Hollow Creek, the same trail Lena vanished from. Her case was declared cold by 2001. The parallels were immediate and chilling. Both girls were runners. Both last seen at dawn. Both tied to the same woods. But the strangest detail. Lena had never once mentioned Eliza to detectives. Sheriff Moorcroft summoned Lena's mother for a formal interview. She sat stiffly, clutching a tissue, her voice wavering. After Eliza disappeared, Lena changed, she said. She got quieter. Started waking up screaming. But she never talked about what happened. The two girls had been inseparable until that summer. Then, abruptly, Lena spent the rest of the school year in Oregon with an aunt. A psychologist's report from '98, buried deep in the case file, mentioned possible trauma, dissociative episodes, and one redacted line. She remembers the whole, but not what went in it. Eliza's case was reopened formally on May 18, 2025. Cadaver dogs were brought in. Drone teams scanned the old bonfire site. And then, just 30 yards from a mossy fire pit, they found it. An old, rusted locket. Engraved initials, ED. Inside, a photo. Two girls, Lena and Eliza, smiling beside the creek. Someone had thrown the locket into the roots of an oak, buried shallow, forgotten. Until now. On May 23, a man called the Napa County tip line. I know who hurt Lena. And I know what happened to Eliza. But you have to dig deeper. There's something buried in the vineyard. Not just Lena. He hung up. The call was traced to a payphone in Vallejo. Prints wiped. No camera nearby. But the voice was recorded. Detective Adrian Coyle played it 10 times. It sounded old, shaky, and familiar. They brought Carl Devereux back in. The retired winemaker. The man who said he saw Lena in the vineyard that morning. They asked if he recognized the voice. Carl sat silent. Then he said, I buried secrets in that soil a long time ago. Maybe too long. Ground-penetrating radar swept Carl's vineyard on May 28th. It lit up just past the second row, beneath a patch of vines Carl always kept fenced off from harvest. They dug. 3 feet down, bones. Smaller than Lena's. A child. Wrapped in oilcloth. A cracked skull. And a tooth with a chipped edge, identical to Eliza's dental records. Carl collapsed. Chapter 16, The Confession. Carl didn't confess to murder. He confessed to knowing. I didn't kill her, he whispered. But I helped cover it up. I thought she'd done it. Who? Asked Detective Coyle. Lena. Carl gave them an old, rotting journal, found hidden in a wine barrel decades ago. It was Eliza's. The final entry read, Lena's acting strange. Keeps talking about the men in the cabin. Says he made us promise. Made us bury it. I think I have to tell someone. I'm scared. If something happens to me, look near the river. Under the flat stone. The river mentioned was the Silverado Trail Bend, where a flat boulder sat half buried in the reeds. Nearby. A collapsed hunting shack, weathered wood, rusted tools, scattered animal bones. The forensics team found rope. Scraps of denim. Faint blood traces, degraded but human. But also, carved into a wall beam, the initials, ED and LR. Clay Rayburn was brought back from Arizona under subpoena. He denied knowing anything about the cabin. But his GPS logs from 2021 showed something odd. He'd stopped by that exact bend. Twice. On nights Lena had gone camping with friends. Detectives wondered, was Clay being blackmailed? In Clay's storage unit, hidden in a workbench drawer, they found it. A letter. Keep your mouth shut. You think I won't dig up what you buried with her? Napa remembers. Signed, E. The ink matched the letters found in Lena's closet. Only Eliza had been dead for 25 years. Detective Coyle took the recorded tip call to a forensic audio specialist in Sacramento. The results came back with 88% probability. The voice belonged to a man named Richard Stowe, former caretaker of the Devereux estate in the 1990s. Stowe had a record, petty theft, trespassing, a restraining order from a teenage girl in 2002. But he'd vanished in 2005. No current address. No credit trail. Just silence. Coyle pulled Carl back in. Did Richard Stowe know the girls? Carl didn't answer. He just stared out the window. Chapter 22, The Creek Photo. In a forgotten envelope inside Eliza's journal was a photo, damaged, black and white. Two teenage girls standing near the Hollow Creek Trail, grinning. Behind them, a blurry figure in the woods. Zooming in revealed a man in a heavy jacket, crouched, watching. The photo was dated July 12, 1998. 2 days before Eliza vanished. Another entry in the journal, previously illegible underwater damage, was recovered with spectral imaging. He made us swear. Said if we told, he'd kill both our families. I want to run. Lena says she's already started planning. The handwriting becomes erratic near the bottom. Sometimes I think Lena is starting to believe him. Old land records showed an unregistered hunting shack north of the Silverado Bend, leased under a fake name that traced back to Stowe. The team hiked in. Inside, they found a decaying mattress, Polaroids pinned to the wall, and one more journal, not Eliza's. Stowe's. Dated entries ranged from 1994 to 2004. They always come here. The creek makes them trust. I make them remember. Lena talks in her sleep. She said she'd take Eliza's place. That's how I knew I had her. The journal ended abruptly in 2004. They buried it wrong. Too shallow. But they know. I carved it in them. Like wine into barrels. Behind the shack, buried in moss, was a cellar hatch. Coyle and her team pried it open. Underground, a foul-smelling root cellar held metal shelves, restraints, and a dozen videotapes labeled only with dates. They brought everything back to the evidence lab. Footage was grainy. Mostly empty woods. A figure, presumably Stowe, walking behind girls with a camera. One tape showed Lena and Eliza at age 10, building a fort near the creek. Another, more disturbing, showed a teenage girl tied to a chair in the cellar. The angle never showed her face, but the hair, posture, and a visible scar on the left forearm matched Lena. Investigators theorized Lena had a secret past. Possibly conditioned, manipulated, even groomed by Stowe. But was she a victim? Or did she help cover something up? Tape number 8 showed a third girl. Young. Dark hair. No one on record matched her. Facial recognition software returned a match, Mia Kessler. Missing from Humboldt County in 1997. Never linked to Napa. Her body was never found. Lena had worked at the vineyard during summers as a teen. Old co-workers described her as quiet, but always watching. One man, Denny Haskell, claimed she once asked him how deep you had to bury something so no dogs would smell it. When asked why she'd say that, Denny shrugged. She said it like a joke. But her face didn't match the laugh. Locals in the Silverado area began coming forward. One woman recalled hearing chanting in the woods in the summer of 1998. Another. A retired school counselor said Lena once told her, "We went in 3. We came out 2. But he followed us anyway." A shocking development. DNA from the grave where Eliza's bones were found did not match Eliza. Instead, it belonged to a teenage girl fathered by Carl Devereux. She had been listed as stillborn in 1982. But she'd lived to at least 15. In Carl's basement furnace, they found partially burned documents. One was a birth certificate. The name, Evelyn Devereux. She had been hidden. Raised quietly. And likely killed between 1997 to 1999. Why had Carl lied for so long? He finally spoke. "I couldn't protect any of them. I tried to forget." Records subpoenaed from Oregon State Hospital showed Lena had been hospitalized in 2002. Diagnosis, dissociative fugue. One note stood out. Patient repeatedly refers to ED as a living person who comes at night. When challenged, she becomes violent. A new witness came forward, Travis Knox, now a firefighter, who was at the 1998 bonfire. "I saw Lena arguing with Eliza. Eliza slapped her. Lena ran into the woods. I heard someone yell. Then silence. Investigators returned to the stone mentioned in the journal. Beneath it, buried deep, a rusted lunchbox. Inside, a lock of hair, a broken necklace, and a stained paper note. Forgive me. I didn't mean to push her. But she saw him. And he saw me. Signed, L.R. An old map of Deverex's land, found in a shoebox, had marks, red XS, dates. 8XS. All near Hollow Creek. Search teams began digging. 2 more sets of remains were found. One was identified as Mia Kessler. The other, still unknown. But both were buried with objects from the 1990s, snap bracelets, a Lisa Frank notebook, a rusted Walkman. Forensic analysis proved the final E letter in Clay's storage was written in Lena's handwriting. She had faked it. To scare him. Or to send a warning. Tape number 12, mislabeled and hidden in the VHS case of a children's movie, showed a recording of Lena, older, 2021, speaking directly into the camera. If you're watching this, I failed. I couldn't stop him. I thought burying the past would kill him too. But he always finds a way back. On March 12, 2023, Lena's watch pinged not near Hollow Creek, but 500 feet west. Near Stowe's old storage shed. That location had never been searched. Under the floorboards, they found one last box. Inside, Lena's missing phone, wrapped in plastic. And a USB drive. The drive held digitized versions of all the tapes. But also, a voice memo. Lena whispering. He said he'd kill Clay. I made a trade. If I ran, he'd leave him alone. If you find this, I'm already gone. In late June, Richard Stowe was found dead in an abandoned barn outside Eureka. Gunshot to the chest. No weapon recovered. Cause of death, homicide. In his pocket, a necklace belonging to Eliza. Sheriff Moorcroft made a statement. Justice has come in pieces. Some questions will never be answered. But we believe we've found them all now. But internally, they knew one body was still missing. The unidentified set of bones found on Deverex's land was carbon dated to 1994. She was young. Likely 13. No match in the missing persons database. In the last pages of Stowe's journal, one list. First names. No last. 8 in total. 2 were Lena and Eliza. 1 was Evelyn. 5 remained. A tip from Oregon led to a woman named Denise, now living under a changed identity. She'd escaped Napa in 1996. She confirmed there were others. We were told if we told, we'd be next. Lena tried to save us. But she was still stuck. Security footage from a winery trail cam, undiscovered until late, captured Lena on the morning of March 12th. She was walking. Not jogging. Toward the woods. She stopped. Looked back. Then entered the trees. Alone. In the closing weeks of the investigation, Carl Deverex died quietly in hospice. His final words, scrawled in a notebook. Secrets grow in soil. But the vines always know. Lena Rayburn was buried beside her cousin. A plaque reads,